Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a classic case of corporate nonsense colliding headfirst with reality. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. New manager destroys morale in record time, gets himself transferred. I was the assistant manager in a discount retailer. Every few days, someone in corporate would come up with an idea designed to look good on paper in an office somewhere. I'm sure maybe a beautiful PowerPoint display or an Excel sheet loaded with formulas. All fantastic in theory, but painful to implement in real life. On this day, an email came basically that from here forward, anything purchased by staff that was going to be in the staff area would have to have a manager sign till receipt attached. There would be 2 days grace, and then anything found on the next area manager call would be noted and banned immediately. So regardless if this was a sandwich and a drink for lunch, jar of coffee, or a full shop, it would be banned. Cameras everywhere except the toilet cubicles wasn't enough. Let's let these guys on a pittance know we trust them less than Chris Chan in an old folks' home. I didn't know what Chris Chan was this morning. I wish I didn't know now. The company, unable to hold managers, were on a huge recruitment drive. Rather than promote from within, they decided to promote from outside to fill the positions faster. So my store gets a new store manager with limited previous experience and out to make his name in the company. Immediately, he hits the canteen, bends everything with no receipt, everything, food and non-food. He doesn't give a crap. The staff are pissed. Word travels fast. Now, I paid my dues between the on-trade and retail. I started at the bottom, sorting bottles for recycling as a kid, and I know enough to know that I and my colleagues are only numbers in the corporate machine, disposable, replaceable, a necessary inconvenience that's to be treated as such and never to be treated as equal to the customer, even when they are the customer. Corporate never considered for a moment just how much the staff spent, 45 to 50 people throughout the week supplementing the sales. Understand that when someone is on a timed break, remembering the receipt is not a priority, and then trying to find a manager to sign it? I know I'd often be in the cash office counting tills, and company policy didn't let you leave that room in the middle of a count with the safe open. So by the time a signature was obtained, a fair chunk of your 15 or 30-minute break was gone, and at your own expense. And this applied to me as well. I was expected to get whoever was on with me to sign my receipts. I had a very quick meeting with everyone I'd see over the next few days, explaining this new piece of stupidity and why their coffee, sugar, etc. had vanished, and that it was entirely the new guy. I also pointed out very clearly that anything purchased in the major retailer directly opposite was outside of the scope of our employer and could not be touched and needed no receipts or proof of any kind. And if it was touched, I would report it directly to the highest available person I could get, bypassing the area management. In that time, we stuck to the rules to the letter. The store was down on its week-on-week figure against last year for the last couple of weeks by a few hundred. Guess why? Area manager arrives to investigate how the new store manager's letting the figures dip, pulls me aside and says what the funk is happening with this drop-off. I explain what happened, how all the staff food and stuff was tossed out with no concern, and how with this situation the only option is to shop elsewhere. He looks shocked, like, how could these idiots do this? He goes off on his phone, comes back, calls me and the new guy into office, says unofficially revert to normal, this is only a blip in my area, get these figures right for next week. It was too late to fix the next week, but within 2 weeks we were okay, and new guy was seen as the savior and got him moved to a brand new store and lasted a month before his team turned on him. And is this maliciously compliant enough? I don't even know. Perfect. You circumvented the new rules by doing something that 1, was completely allowed, 2, also hurt the store, 3, demonstrated to the area manager how stupid the bean counters were being, and 4, got the rule revoked because of its deleterious effect on sales. I don't know if it helped that the area manager realized that workers had value as customers too, but it was a nice slap in the chops. And our second story. The sidewalk squatter who thought she owned a parking spot. Living in New Jersey and working in New York City means that parking is basically a daily game of survival. Over the years, I've gotten pretty good at it. I know which streets to check, I have a solid rule, and on average, I can find a free spot within 10 minutes. That's practically a miracle in New York City terms. Last night, though, I had a win right off the bat. Barely 2 minutes into my usual search, I spot a wide-open parking spot, prime real estate. No fire hydrants, no driveways, just a perfect little slice of free curbside heaven. I can't believe my luck. I turn on my blinkers, slow down, and start positioning myself for the parallel park, and then a woman steps into the middle of the spot, plants her feet, and holds up her hands like she's directing traffic. At first, I assume she's confused or mistaking me for an Uber. It happens sometimes, so I roll down my window and politely say, "I'm trying to park here," and that's when the madness starts. She immediately snaps, No, you can't do that. I'm reserving this spot for my friend. They're right around the corner." I actually let out a laugh because, what? That's not how parking works. Not here, not anywhere. You can't just stand in a parking spot and claim it, I tell her. That's not a thing. She waves her hand dismissively. Yes, it is. I've lived in New York a long time. I think I know what's right and wrong. Then she lets out this maniacal, self-satisfied laugh as if she's just won an argument that hasn't even started. Now I'm stuck in this awkward position. My car's partially angled into the space, but I can't pull in without literally running over a human being. I take a deep breath. I could argue with her, but what's the point? She's clearly unhinged. I briefly consider calling the cops, but I know exactly how that would go. By the time they showed up, the friend would have arrived, parked, and the whole thing would be a waste of time. So I opt for a different strategy. I simply drive off. But don't give up. Instead of looking for another spot, I circle the block. I keep my eye on the parking space, waiting for this so-called friend to show up. I'm determined to see how this plays out. 4 minutes later, I return, and sure enough, the spot's taken. And guess who's magically disappeared? The lady. She didn't even stay to greet her friend or direct them into the spot. No, the second she got what she wanted, she vanished into thin air. I was fuming. The audacity. The sheer entitlement of thinking you can just stand in a public parking space and call dibs like it's your personal driveway. I was fuming. The audacity. The sheer entitlement of thinking you can just stand in a public parking space and call dibs like it's your personal driveway. It wasn't even about the parking spot anymore. It was the principle. If she had just been a normal human and asked, "Hey, my friend's right around the corner, could you please let them have it?" I might have considered it, but no. She went full NYC mob boss, declaring ownership over something that was never hers to begin with. Eventually, I found another spot a few blocks away, but the whole time I kept thinking I should have recorded her. The way she stood there, arms crossed like some sidewalk warlord who had the power to control street parking with nothing but sheer audacity. Has anyone else encountered this kind of insanity? Does this mythical "I can stand in a parking spot to reserve it" rule actually exist somewhere? Because if it does, I clearly missed the memo. I've heard of this before, but never actually seen it happen. I remember watching this one video online about two Chinese ladies standing in the middle of a parking spot in the mall that they reserved for their family. You can see the lady run to the spot as this guy's going in and telling him no. The guy honked his horn and kept inching in little by little. They eventually left. I'm assuming the driver found parking elsewhere, but they glared at him as they left. And our last story, Old Dad. This is a story I've heard from my grandfather many times. I don't know, maybe he exaggerated it a little, but it sounds epic. I'll retell it just like he did, just without all the swearing. I was born and raised in a small town in the Midwest. My father was a mechanic, my mother a teacher, and from an early age, I knew that honesty was the most important thing in life. After high school, I had dreams, plans, but for some reason, I always wanted to serve in the Army. At 18, I enlisted. At first, it was tough. Early wake-ups, drills, strict sergeants, but over time, I got used to it. I learned to take a hit, to think fast, to act decisively. In the Army, I made real friends. One of them, Bobby, was a handyman. He could make anything with his own hands. He even made me a lighter, which I still keep to this day. When my service ended, I dreamed of coming home. I imagined walking into my house, sinking into my favorite chair, pouring myself a whiskey and lighting a cigarette. But when I arrived, I found out that my house had been sold. Turns out a local realtor named Johnny Wells had pulled off a scam. He forged documents, sold my house without my knowledge, and skipped town. The real estate agents in town just shrugged. Sorry, buddy, but he's gone. That's all they could say. But I wasn't the kind of guy to give up. I started looking for him. Months went by, phone calls, trips, talking to other victims. Soon I found more people Johnny had screwed over. Among them was a guy whose brother worked for the police in another state. After a long search, I finally tracked Johnny down. He'd set up a new office in a neighboring city. I bought a small voice recorder and headed there. When I walked into his office, he didn't even recognize me. "How can I help you?" he asked with a smile, clearly mistaking me for a new client. I smirked. "Don't you remember me, Johnny?" I asked, sitting down across from him. He frowned, trying to place my face. That's when I slowly pulled a little gift from my pocket. Johnny's eyes widened in terror. What is that?" Calmly, I pulled the pin and said, "You know, I've got nothing left to lose now." Johnny turned pale. Listen, let's talk this out." "We should have talked before," I barked. "Now you're going to tell me where the money went." Johnny started talking, fast and nervous, as if hoping it would save him. He spilled everything, where the documents were, where he hid the money, and who else he'd scammed. I put a cigarette between my teeth and grinned. "Goodbye, Johnny." At that exact moment, the police burst into the office. Johnny screamed, "He's got a grenade!" I flicked the lighter, lit my cigarette, and raised my hands. "Relax, guys, it's just a lighter." See, Bobby the handyman had made me a lighter out of a training grenade. It looked real, but only to someone completely clueless about weapons. One of the officers gave me a dumbfounded look while his partner, coincidentally the brother of one of Johnny's victims, patted him on the shoulder. He turned to Johnny. "Johnny Wells, you're under arrest for fraud," he said, slapping the cuffs on him. As they led Johnny away, I took a deep drag and smirked. "Next time, Johnny, don't mess with people who know how to find you." After Johnny's arrest, an investigation began. Everything he confessed to was recorded on my voice recorder. It turned out that many victims had already filed reports against him, but the police couldn't find him. Until I did. A few weeks later, the court found him guilty of fraud, forgery, and money laundering. Johnny got 10 years in prison. And my house? Thanks to the recovered documents and testimonies from the other victims, the court ruled the sale illegal and restored my ownership. The new owner didn't even argue. He turned out to be a victim himself and willingly gave up the house. When I stepped into my home again, I sank into my favorite chair, poured myself a whiskey, lit a cigarette, and smiled. Welcome home. Your grandpa was a man who clearly deserved respect. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.